Hello, my name is David Shelvey, and I'm a tax attorney. I can represent taxpayers before the Internal Revenue Service as well as before the United States Tax Court. However, before I could do this, there was a process that I had to go through to be registered with the IRS in order to represent taxpayers before the IRS. In order to represent taxpayers before the U.S. Tax Court, I had to become a member of the U.S. Tax Court Bar, and after doing so, I received a unique U.S. Tax Court Bar number. This is an instructional video to walk you through the steps I took in order to become registered with the IRS, as well as becoming a member of the U.S. Tax Court Bar. To begin with, there's a couple things you're going to want to have handy in order to help you out. A pen to write with, a notepad to take notes on, some regular size envelopes which you're going to put addresses on to go to the IRS with your application and a certificate of good standing, and one goes to the United States Tax Court. What I did, I went to the United States Post Office and got these priority mail envelopes. They're tracked, and I could just put them in like that and put them in the mail, and I knew when the IRS and the United States Tax Court received them. The other thing is your fingerprint cards are going to arrive in an envelope about this big, and you don't want to fold the fingerprint cards. So what I would suggest is finding an envelope or put them inside a priority mail envelope that's about this big. Now what I did was I put a sticker on the front, priority mail. I put a certified mailing card on it, as I also put a receipt requested card so I know when the fingerprint cards were received. Make sure you write down in your notepad each letter you mailed and when. Also, fully document items like the date, each step you took, any password you entered, any number you called, any agent you spoke with, and any identification number issued. For example, December 5th, 2015, fingerprint cards were ordered. Called 866-255-0654, talk with Agent Johnson, whose number is 234-5555. You're doing this because you might need to follow up on something. For example, several weeks go by and you still have not received your fingerprint cards. You take a look at your notepad and see who you called and try and reach the agent you spoke with and confirm they were mailed. During this instructional video, I'll be giving you addresses to mail documents to. Write each address directly on the envelope. Then, of course, put the envelopes in a safe place. At the end of this video, I will repeat these addresses so you can verify them. In order to fully represent a taxpayer before the IRS, you'll need to obtain a professional tax identification number, also known as a PTIN. You will need to obtain a centralized authorization file number, also known as a CAF number, and you will need to obtain an electronic filing identification number, also known as an EFIN. Before we go onto the IRS website to start the application process, in order to speed up the application process, there are 4 things you should do now. At this point, I will add, I started the process of registering with the IRS on January 13, 2015 and was completed with everything by April 19, 2015. Had I done things in the order I'm giving to you now, I would have been done much faster. Here are the first 4 things you will need to obtain. So grab your notepad and pen and get ready to write. After you have been sworn in as an attorney with your state bar, contact the clerk of the highest court in the state you're licensed to practice law in and request 4 original certificates of good standing. I sent an email to the clerk of the court, and a week or so later they arrived in the mail. You will need 3 for the IRS and 1 for the U.S. Tax Court Bar. Here's what mine looks like, as issued by the clerk of the Supreme Court of North Dakota. Notice the words "in good standing." Also notice the date, January 26. I started the process on January 13th, and 13 days later I found out the IRS and the U.S. Tax Court both needed original certificates of good standing in order to move forward. In order to become an authorized e-file provider, you will need to obtain 2 fingerprint cards by calling 866-255-0654. I was on hold for about an hour, and a week or so later they arrived in the mail. Later on in this video, I'll provide you with more information. I found it a lot easier to obtain my PTIN, CAF number, and EFIN by simply having a business license. Further, the fees you pay become a business expense. As you can see, I chose Rockcraft Tax Services for my business name. Years ago I started a band called Rockcraft and simply chose the name for my business. Who knew that even to this day I still would be wearing a tie? After you obtain your business license, you'll then need to go onto the IRS website and obtain an employer identification number, also known as an EIN. Let's now go to the IRS website at www.irs.gov. On the far right-hand side is a search bar. Type in the letters EIN, that's N as in Nancy, and press enter. The first thing that shows up is Apply for an Employer Identification Number online. Select this by clicking on the link. Once my application was filled out and submitted, I was provided with an Employer Identification Number right away. If you've ever received an EIN before, then my EIN letter should look familiar to you. I highly recommend you download, print out, and save this letter. A professional tax identification number, or PTIN, must be obtained by all attorneys who are compensated for preparing or assisting in the preparation of all or substantially all of any U.S. federal tax return, claim for refund, or other tax forms submitted to the IRS. You will need to obtain one PTIN and it is valid for the one tax year. What happens if you prepare an IRS tax return and you don't have a PTIN? Failure to have a current PTIN could result in the imposition of Internal Revenue Code Section 6695 penalties, injunction, and/or disciplinary action by the IRS Office of Professional Responsibility. On top of that, such behavior may be reported to your state bar as well as other bars you are a member of. Simply put, don't take chances. Get a PTIN number. You can apply online for your PTIN or mail in your IRS Form W-12 application. I highly recommend that you first apply online and see if you get a PTIN issued to you. So for starters, let's go online and submit an electronic version of the W-12 application. Let's now go to the IRS website at www.irs.gov. To apply online for a PTIN, go to the IRS homepage. On the right-hand side, you will see for Tax Pros. Move your mouse over this and click on it. Next, look to your right side of your computer screen where it says Renew and Sign Up Now. Click this. Next, look on the left-hand side of your computer screen where it says Create an Online PTIN Account. Click this. You should now see a screen that is titled Create an Account and should look like this. A couple things I need to point out. Your user ID is your email account, so make sure it is a permanent email account and not a temporary one. You will also need to write down your password recovery. Another thing is your password. Once you hit Next at the bottom of the screen, it will create your account and take you to your next screen where you will need to come up with a password. I had to use numbers, upper and lowercase letters, and a symbol until it was accepted. So be prepared to enter about 10 digits and don't forget to write down your password. After you choose a password, you will go to a main menu. Since I've completed and submitted my application, I already have a PTIN. Rather than show you my private information, I'll explain to you what each web page of the application screen looks like. Under Manage My PTIN, choose Update My PTIN Account Information. Next, you'll go to an application screen. On your left is a subsections headings to start with Gather Your Information. Under that, it says Contact Information. This is where you put your personal address and your business address. Under this is Business Information. This is where your business name goes, as well as your employer identification number. Once you get your CAF number and your EFIN, you will later edit this page and enter it here. Under Business Information, it says Professional Credentials. This is where you add your state bar license information. When I was admitted to the U.S. Tax Court Bar, I later edited this page and entered my tax court bar information. Finally, review your information before submitting your application. Then select Next at the bottom. At the next screen, you will electronically sign and submit your application. Either on the main menu page or upon submitting your application, You will be prompted about submitting payment information to activate your PTIN for 1 year. You can pay by an e-check withdrawal on your bank account or by debit credit card. Also, under Manage My PTIN account, you can upload a document. If you can, scan your certificate of good standing and upload it here. This is what worked for me regarding me getting my PTIN. I not only electronically filed for my PTIN, I also mailed in my application. With my application, I included an original certificate of good standing and a copy of my driver's license. To mail in an application, go to the IRS website and download IRS Form W-12 application. The IRS website also has instructions for the IRS Form W-12 application. Simply search W-12 in the far right corner search bar. Taking a look at the W-12 application, it's pretty straightforward. Line 1 is your legal name and the name used when you've last filed your tax return. Check Initial Application. For line 2, you'll need to decide if this is for the current calendar year or the next calendar year, or both. Lines 3, 4, and 5A are self-explanatory. For line 5B, select Yes and enter your business name and its employer identification number. Lines 6 and 7 are self-explanatory. For lines 8 and 9, it is important that you verify the address and filing status you used on your last tax return, as the IRS will try to match that address up with the application's address. If different, the IRS will return your application with a letter stating such. Since you are an attorney, you will skip line 10 and answer line 11. For line 12, select Attorney. Put in your state's initials, like MI for Michigan, your state bar number, and the date your license expires. Then at the bottom of your application, you will sign and date it. Print the application out, sign and date it, and mail it to the Internal Revenue Service, Tax Pro PTIN Processing Center, 104, Brook Ridge Drive, 5000, Waterloo, IA, 50702. You can mail a check with your application or pay online with a debit or credit card. If you do not have a credit card, you can get a temporary credit card from any grocery store and load the amount you need onto it. Then use this temporary card to pay the necessary fees, and remember, since you have a business license, these fees and other fees you pay are business expenses. So for tax purposes, don't forget to print out and save all receipts. To verify the fee amount you need to pay for your PTIN, please refer to the most recent IRS Form W-12 and look for the fee amounts for the current tax year. I think I paid around $63 for the first time I did this. In 2015, I paid $50 to renew my PTIN for the 2016 tax year. Include a copy of one of the following government-issued IDs with your W-12 application: passport, passport card, driver's license, U.S. state ID card, military ID card, or a national ID card. Mail your letter either certified or priority mail to make sure the IRS receives it, and then write down the date you mailed it and the date they received it. You should receive a PTIN letter approving your application. If you do not hear anything after a couple weeks, call them at 1-877-613-7846 to check on the status of your application. As I said earlier, you can try filing online first and see if this works. If not, send in an IRS Form W-12 application with a copy of your ID and a certificate of good standing. I originally applied for my PTIN online and about a week later got one, but when I went on the IRS website, it said something like processing credentials, so I called the IRS to find out my application status. I was told acknowledging my credentials was on hold as they were unable to verify I was a member of my state bar and in good standing. And FYI, the IRS will not do this for you. After I mailed the IRS my W-12 application, a copy of my driver's license, and an original certificate of good standing, the IRS website was updated to show my professional credentials as an attorney. The Centralized Authorization File, or CAF, is a computerized system of records which houses authorization information for both powers of attorney and tax information authorizations. The CAF system contains several types of records, among them taxpayer and representative records, tax modules, and authorizations. A PTIN allows you to prepare and file a tax return for a taxpayer. In order to have permission from the IRS to view a taxpayer's file and talk with an IRS agent regarding a taxpayer's return, you'll need to obtain a CAF number. A CAF number is a unique 9-digit identification number that the IRS assigns to you as a representative the first time you file a third-party authorization with the IRS. What you will need to do is mail in IRS Form 2848. A letter is sent to you informing you of your assigned CAF number. Use your assigned CAF number on all future powers of attorney. The CAF number is not an indication of authority to practice before the IRS. CAF numbers are different from third parties' TIN, Taxpayer Identification Number, EIN, Employer Identification Number, or PTIN, Preparer Tax Identification Number. CAF numbers may be assigned to an individual or a business entity. Next, you will need to edit and print out IRS Form 2848, Power of Attorney and Declaration of Representative. Go to the IRS website homepage and in the search bar type 2848, then search. The first link is an interactive PDF 2848 file, which means you can fill it out and save it. The second link is the form's instructions. For now, let's look at the one I submitted. This is my redacted IRS Form 2848 that I filed with the IRS that got me my CAF number. Notice that since the IRS had not assigned me a CAF number, I typed the word none. List your business name as the taxpayer and assign yourself to be the attorney of record for the current tax year. After I mailed the form into the IRS, they went ahead and issued me a CAF number. There are other IRS forms to use to get a CAF number, but Form 2848, Power of Attorney and Declaration of Representative work for me. If you're on the East Coast, mail it to Internal Revenue Service, CAF Unit 5333, Getwell Road, Stop 8423, Memphis, TN 38118. For the West Coast, mail it to Internal Revenue Service, CAF Unit 1973, North Roland White Boulevard, MS 6737, Ogden, Utah 84201. And outside of the United States, mail it to Internal Revenue Service, International CAF MS 308.123, 2970 Market Street, Philadelphia, PA 19104. Inside the envelope, along with Form 2848, include a cover letter and a certificate of good standing. You might also consider enclosing a copy of your business license. The cover letter I sent simply said, "To whom it may concern." I'm starting my own tax business for individuals and businesses needing representation before the Internal Revenue Service. I'm trying to obtain a centralized authorization file, CAF number, in order to represent taxpayers before the IRS. I am filing IRS Form 2848 for my business and appointing myself as a representative for my business. I am filing IRS Form 2848 for the sole purpose of obtaining a CAF number for myself as an attorney. Enclosed are a completed Form 2848 and a certificate of good standing with my state bar. Thank you in advance, Attorney at Law. If several weeks go by and you do not hear from the IRS, call the Practitioner Priority Service at 1-866-860-4259. My experience has been very positive, but my average wait time in the queue has been about an hour. Electronic Filing Identification Number, EFIN, is a number issued by the IRS to individuals or firms that have been approved as an authorized IRS e-file provider. It is included with all electronic return data transmitted to the IRS. There is no fee for an EIFIN. It can take up to 45 days for the IRS to approve an e-file application. Just so you know, Preparer Tax Identification Numbers, or PTINs, are issued to individuals. Electronic Filing Identification Numbers, EFIN, are issued to individuals or firms. Most preparers need both. By having an EFIN number, you can file tax returns online for taxpayers right from your office. I have found filing a return online has about a 5-day turnaround, but by mail the IRS may take weeks to process. There are 3 steps you need to take to become an e-service provider. Step 1. Create an IRS e-service account. Step 2. Submit your application. And Step 3. Pass a suitability check. Before you begin the online e-file application, you must have an IRS e-file e-services account, which facilitates electronic interaction with the IRS. To access the application on the IRS homepage, click on For Tax Pros. Then click on Access e-Services. Scroll down to e-file application. Then click on Become an Authorized e-file provider. Read through this page to understand the application process, and then under Step 1, click on the IRS e-Services account blue link. Then click on e-Services Login or Register. Select Register on your right. You are now at the registration screen. Remember to print your application before filing. You'll need to input your personal information and have your adjusted gross income from a filed tax return from a previous year. Choosing a username was a bit tricky for me. I found several usernames not available. Notice the password instructions. Your password must be at least 8 characters, contain an uppercase and lowercase letter, a number, and a special character, and cannot be the same as the username. I would not use the same password as your PTIN password. You also need to choose a unique 5-digit PIN number. There is also some security questions you'll need to answer in order to unlock your account, if it ever gets locked. Also, notice that the taxpayer address you input here will be your address of record with the IRS. At the bottom, select Accept. You'll need to select an organization you'll be representing. For me, I created an account based on my business Rawcraft and used my business name and address. This will take you to a services screen. Select Application and then e-file application. When creating your application, you'll need to input the following: firm name and address, principal, responsible officials, program applying, for which I selected electronic return originator and transmitter, forms you plan on filing, like 1040, 1041, 1065, etc., firm suitability, delegated users, application status, service authorized for, application summary, personal information, application comments, application submission, and self-certification. Step 2. Earlier in this video, I recommended you order your fingerprint cards sooner than later. Even though I am an attorney and the IRS website says that attorneys do not need to submit fingerprint cards, my application was placed on hold until after I submitted my fingerprint cards. When your fingerprint cards arrive, make a copy of the information on the cards, but do not write on the cards until after you get your fingerprints done. I filled out the cards in advance with the enclosed information that the IRS letter instructed me to do. When I got to the sheriff's office, the lady was very upset with me that I had written on the cards and took white out and covered over what I had written. Let the individual taking your fingerprints do their thing, and then afterwards write the information on the cards as instructed by the IRS. You'll need 2 cards, one for the IRS and one for the FBI. Mail both cards with a certificate of good standing to Internal Revenue Service, attention EFU Acceptance, Stop 983, 310 Lowell Street, Andover, MA 05501-0001. Let's now turn our attention to becoming a member of the United States Tax Court Bar. It's been my experience that the mere fact a petition with the tax court has been filed was enough to possibly solve a tax matter, or at least an opportunity to negotiate a better settlement with the IRS. I did have an IRS agent once tell me that it was rare for a taxpayer not to settle with the IRS before going to tax court. If you have a good case, settlement could be as much as a 100% reduction of the tax liability your client currently owes. However, in order to file petitions and represent taxpayers in tax court, you'll need to become a member of the United States Tax Court Bar. Let's now go to the United States Tax Court website and download and fill out a bar application to become a member of the United States Tax Court Bar. At your internal web browser address bar, type in www.ustaxcourt.gov. At the top right side, you should see the word Forms. You will need to fill out and submit Form 30, the admissions application. To get to this form, click on Forms, then select Admissions Information. When mailing in your admissions application, also include the proper fee amount and an original certificate of good standing. I found out the hard way that it must be an original certificate of good standing and not a copy, or your application will be returned. The application is pretty self-explanatory. Start by reading through the instructions. Notice the fee amount. You might also consider obtaining a printed copy of the Tax Court Rules of Practice and Procedure. For line 3, I use my business name and address. If you do not know a notary, your bank will generally notarize your signature for free. Mail your completed Form 30, admissions fee, and original certificate of good standing to Office of the Clerk of the Court, United States Tax Court, 400 2nd Street Northwest, Room 111, Washington, D.C. 20217. The United States Tax Court will mail you a beautiful frameable certificate to hang on your wall next to your state bar license as well as your Juris Doctor diploma. Well, that's it. Hopefully I've provided you with enough information that once you start the process, within a month or so, you will get your PTIN, your CAF number, your EFIN, and your United States Tax Court bar number. My name is David Shelvey, and I'm a tax attorney, and shortly you'll be one too. Thank you for watching my video, and have a wonderful day.